Good evening. I am Kamal Kuji Chakalia, and this is On the Case with Kamal Kuji Chakalia, where each week we bring on a great personality from the area who is doing some tremendous things here in New Jersey or in the country for that matter, and for your benefit. So this week we have a great brother. He's been on his show before. Uh, uh, Brother Larry Hamm, who is running for New Jersey Senate seat for the second time. So we're going to have him on in a minute. Right now, I want to bring on Michael. What's up, son?
What's up, Dad?
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Doing great.
Good.
Um, anything? You know what? I was over at the park looking at the work that they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and it looks like they have a leak coming from further up the sidewalk instead
Little
of
bit.
up, instead of up the path.
Yeah.
And so it looks like they have a little bit more engineering to do than what they may have thought they had to do.
Yes. They had an excavator out there working on
Okay, well, let's hope they get it right, cause winter is upon us,
it. Yes.
and it's going to be freezing up pretty soon. And our kids still walk down there, and I'm still upset that after 50 years, 60 years, they haven't gotten that thing fixed. So, um, but as you say, they're working on it, right?
They working on it,
They're
Pop.
working
They
on it.
working on it. They
Yeah,
got people out there almost every day.
yeah. I'm not all that interested in they working on it. I want it fixed.
I got faith in our government.
Oh. Okay. Um. Also, I saw a sign on Bellevue Avenue that they were going to be working on Bellevue Avenue.
Oh, really?
They were going to close down Bellevue Avenue and start repaving that.
Oh,
But of
man.
course, the sign said 11/7. It's well past 11/7.
Okay.
Maybe they're doing that just to fake us out. I don't know.
Nah, they have plans on doing it. They just got tied up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you have such tremendous faith in our city and county government. You
Our,
know,
our
I'm very
city
happy.
leadership, Mayor Reed Gutierrez,
That's right.
good guy,
Right.
excellent politician.
We shall see. Okay, let's bring on Larry because we don't want to keep him waiting. Um, Brother Ham, hello. Your microphone is off. There you go. How are you?
All right, my brothers. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you, Mr. Ham.
Um, Good to see Michael, and of course, my brother Kamal, who
Hey,
I've known for almost half a century.
yeah, that's
And
true.
that's for real.
Yeah, we've
That's
been
for
putting in some
real.
work, man. We don't put in some work, you know,
That's right. That's right.
and we still doing it. You know, I
We
try.
still here.
I retired from actually publishing the newspapers. I turned that over to a young man named Carlos Avila. He's publisher now, but I still gotta keep my hands in communication. So that's why we do this podcast. It's important that we continue to be able to control our news.
Right.
That's why we like to have people like you on this show. So because you don't get you get coverage. You get coverage, but you don't get the coverage like you're supposed to get.
Now you're talking.
So
So
we
we
try.
Because
gotta
there's
let people
coverage and
know.
there's coverage.
Yeah,
We gotta let people know what you have to say.
Thank
that's
you.
right. That's right. And our audience isn't as big as we would like it to be, but we're gonna keep at it until it gets there. You know.
We're gonna
That's
get over
right.
that wall. We're gonna get over that wall.
So, brother, you're running for the state for the Senate to become a senator, federal senator
Right.
from New Jersey. Okay, why are you doing
Yes.
that? You did it once. Why are you doing it again?
Well, because I'm trying to win. And I'm going to keep going until I win.
I heard that.
I want to be the United States Senator from New Jersey because we need a senator that's not going to be putting gold bars in his pocket and cash payments in his dry cleaning. You know, we need elected officials that will not give in to corruption. But more importantly than that, we need United States senators that will speak out on the issues that affect the Black community in particular. Of course, it goes without saying that if I'm senator for the entire state and everyone in it. But Kamal, you know, I'm a child of the Black Power movement. And those roots are still there. And we try to get into office, to use these offices as a platform to address the issues that affect our community. And right now, Black people are catching hell in this country. We are faced with an existential crisis. They're trying to eliminate our right to vote. They're trying to eliminate our history. And they're trying to eliminate us.
Amen.
And the problem is that many of us are sleepwalking. You know, it's it's like being in the eye of a hurricane. You know, in the eye of a hurricane, the sun can come through and birds can sing, but literally within a few hundred yards of the eye, destruction is all around. Black people are being killed at a rate that we haven't seen since like the 1940s and 50s. There's been a lot of talk about racist attacks on other groups, and these issues should be raised. Nobody should be the victim of a racist attack simply because of any incidental characteristics that they have. But you wouldn't know it. But Black people are at the top of the list. The most, we are the most victims of racially motivated violence in this country today.
You wouldn't know it by
you wouldn't know it because all the talk is about other people.
That's right.
And
past.
That's right. That's right. But Black people are still the greatest victims of racially motivated violence in this country. And that's according to the FBI. And also according to the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and other government agencies, the greatest threat right now to domestic tranquility in this country is coming from white supremacist terrorist organizations. And that's a fact. I mean, this was just announced. I mean, it's been announced literally 3 years in a row by the FBI, 3 years in a row by the Department of Homeland Security, both at the federal level and the state level. I mean, Kamal, you and I came up during the period when we were demanding Black studies. Many students take these Black studies programs for granted, like they always been here.
Yeah.
Before 1966, there were no Black studies programs on college campuses. It took a student movement, a civil rights movement, and eventually the Black Power movement to bring these programs into existence. And, you know, we had Black studies and we were taking it. And then all of a sudden, like in the late 90s and early 2000s, there were people telling us that we didn't need Black history.
Yeah.
We should concentrate on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Of course, we should know those things. Those things are not alien to us because we invented them. We invented science. We invented technology. We invented engineering. And we invented mathematics. But that doesn't mean that we should know our history or our culture. And so we began to turn away from our Black Studies programs, and they began to be phased out and dwittled down. Programs that were fully accredited as departments are now only Black Studies programs. And so what happens? What happens? You get people in Florida and in Virginia and all over the country that are saying, well, we don't need, nor do we want Black Studies in our schools. They banning Black books. They banning books about Black people written by Black authors and white authors, you know? And as far as our vote, can you imagine, Brother Kamau, and we sitting here in the 21st century, at the end of the first quarter, we almost at 2025, the end of the first quarter of the 21st century, and more than 500 bills have been introduced in state legislatures around this country to circumscribe, limit in some way, impede Black people's right to vote. This is amazing, you know, and everybody's just walking around, you know, like nothing's really happening, you know, when in fact what we need a movement today that is stronger, that would be stronger than the movement we had in the 1960s.
Now, if you should get into Congress and to become a senator, how would you would go in as a Democrat, right?
Right. I'm running in a Democratic primary in June.
Okay. But then wouldn't you be part of the Democratic machine? And you know, when I look at Congress, and if the vote comes up, all the Democrats vote this way, and all the Republicans vote that way. So, you know, would you put your vote in there with them, even though it has no benefit for us, or it may even be detrimental to us, just because it's a democratic process?
Well, I'm running as a Democrat because right now we have a two-party duopoly in this country.
Yes,
and it's virtually impossible for anyone to get elected except through one of the two major parties. Now, there are exceptions. You know, you see Bernie Sanders, he's an independent. He's a real independent. He ran against Democrats and Republicans in the general election, and he won. And I think Angus King from Maine is another independent. But for Black people, it's virtually impossible to get into office except through one of those parties. But let me say this. I would be a Democrat in name, but I'm a freedom fighter in my bones. I will vote.
Well, no, that's the truth.
I will vote with the Democrats when they're right, and I'll vote against the Democrats when they're wrong.
Okay.
And one of the first things I'm going to do when I get to the Senate is sponsor my own reparations bill.
Oh.
That will discuss payment and not just a study commission.
Right.
We'll study this thing. You and I'll be dead and they'll still be studying it.
There's a whole bunch of us.
In fact,
who are
I think that might be the plan.
You know?
You know?
You know?
They stole us. They sold us. They owe us.
And they made
I'm going to press that issue.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
And I'm going to press. That's going to be the first order of business for me.
Why is that important?
Well, it's important because we should receive restitution for the 245 years of slave labor stolen from our ancestors, because that restitution was promised to us. See, people think reparations is some pie in the sky kind of idea that somebody thought up recently. No. Leaders from our community have been talking about reparations since the end of the Civil War. Even prior to the Civil War, there were demands for reparations. And it seems that the only one that actually got reparations was slave masters. You know,
Right.
in Washington, D.C., do you know they have Emancipation Day? They've had Emancipation Day for almost 100 years in Washington, D.C.
Hmm.
But what many people don't know, and their Emancipation Day in Washington, D.C. is not based on the passage of the 13th Amendment, which was in 1865. Their Emancipation Day is based on the day that Lincoln emancipated enslaved people in Washington, D.C. before the end of the Civil War. But when he emancipated these folks, the slave masters got paid, not the enslaved people. They compensated the
For their
slave
losses.
masters
Yeah,
for
compensating
loss
for their
of their
losses.
property. And one of the things that I didn't know until recent times was this was one of the reasons for the formation of the Ku Klux Klan. Now, I'm not talking about what the Klan wrote in their charter. I'm talking about what historical evidence shows us, that a lot of these people who were in the first Klan that was formed in 1865 in Tennessee, they were organizing around the grievance of many of those who had owned enslaved people and who did not get any restitution when the people that they held in bondage were freed. So this is an issue that all of us, and I was pleased to hear yesterday. I was on a conference call with some people. We're working on this issue of reparations, and they were saying that the latest polls show that 80% of Black people polled support reparations, and they should support reparations. And one of the origins of reparations is the 40 acres, and we say 40 acres and a mule, but it was really 40 acres and $50. What happened was when Sherman was moving south and he came into South Carolina, with the stroke of a pen, Sherman expropriated almost 400,000 acres of land held by Confederate slave masters. And he distributed that land to the enslaved. And he did this through General Order number 15. That was issued in January, I believe January of 1864. And then based on general orders, because see, everybody knew that you just couldn't free the enslaved people. Like, what were they going to do?
Right.
After they were free? Where were they going to go? How were they going to live?
Right.
Everybody knew that they had to have a stake in the economy. So the plan was to distribute land so that they could work the land and support themselves and build up wealth and so on and so forth. So Thaddeus Stevens put in a bill in Congress called H.R. 29. And H.R. 29 promised 40 acres and $50 to all of those who fought in the Civil War, or were all of those enslaved people that fought in the Civil War, or were the survivors and family members of those who fought in the Civil War. And this bill was on the way to passage, but what happened? Lincoln was assassinated. And whatever influenced the radical Republicans, because Lincoln was not one of the radical Republicans. The radical Republicans were a faction of the Republican Party that wanted emancipation and restitution for the enslaved people. Harriet Tubman was in that group. Thaddeus Stevens was in that group. Frederick Douglass was in that group, and on and on and on and on. And so HR 29, once Lincoln was assassinated, his vice president, Andrew Johnson, became president. Johnson was from Tennessee, you know, and his sympathies were with the slaveholders. And one of the first things that Johnson did was to issue executive orders compelling the land that Sherman had expropriated from the slave masters to be returned to the slave masters. And in South Carolina, there was armed resistance. When this went down, you know, after the black people had received the land, when this went down, there was armed resistance. And the irony is that Lincoln sent a general who fought in the Civil War, General O. Howard. I guess his name was Oliver something with an O. Howard. And Howard was an abolitionist. That's the strange, you know, there are a lot of strange aspects to this history, but Howard was in favor of abolition of slavery. But Lincoln sent him down there with federal troops to take the land back. And by the way, Howard University is named after General Howard. Like if you go in the university library, you will see the picture of General Howard there. But many people don't talk about that part of his history. You know, they talk about, as they always do, the good part and leave out the other part. But we look, this country has given reparations to a whole lot of other folks. Ronald Reagan gave reparations to Japanese Americans, and they should receive reparations. They were put in concentration camps during World War II. Worse than that, their property was confiscated. They owned all kind of land and farms and vineyards in California. Man, they took those people land and put them in concentration camps. They call them internment camps, but they were concentration camps because all was living there was Japanese, surrounded by U.S. military, and they were held in there till the end of World War II. Ronald Reagan made sure that every one of those families, the surviving families, and those who are still alive, each received $20,000 in compensation. The United States contributed.
That was a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. That's when they tell you they don't have the money. Never believe that. What they don't have is a desire to do what's right. The money is there. Look what's going on right now. You know, they're sending money to Israel and Ukraine like they can't print the money fast enough.
Right.
They can't print the money. We can't get money down here to get roads fixed and housing built and everything else. We closing libraries, we closing hospitals, we closing firehouses. You know, we can't get money, but boy, that money is going. They just appropriated 14 billion. Like Israel gets 3.8 billion every year from the United States. They just put 14.8 billion on top of that. And that's not enough. And they want to send so many billions to Ukraine. But I don't want to get off the topic. The point is that, you know, this country has provided reparations to other people. Many Jewish brothers and sisters were enslaved in slave labor camps in Europe, not in the United States, in Europe. The United States contributed money to reparation funds for those people imprisoned in slave labor camps in Europe by the Nazis during World War II. And I could go on and on and on. The point is that if this country can provide reparations and restitution and compensation to other people, then it must provide reparations to the descendants of those who were enslaved in this country, who built this country. That is not a cliche. That is not an exaggeration. That's not hyperbole. We literally built this country. This state, the state of New Jersey, was a Dutch colony. Listen, we always talk about 1619. I'm not going to get into a debate about when we first got here, But let's just talk about 1619. 1619, a Dutch ship brings enslaved Africans to Point Comfort in Jamestown, Virginia. The next year, 1620, the Dutch colony of New Amsterdam is founded, which included what was Indian territory, Indian land. It eventually became New Jersey, but New Jersey and New York were part of New Amsterdam. That was in 1620. By 1625, enslaved African people were here in New Jersey. And what were they doing? They were clearing land for farms, building dams, building roads, building the infrastructure needed for civilization. Done with slave labor. You all are down there in Trenton. Trenton was founded by William Trent, who was a slave master. Trent House, which was the official government house, used slave labor as servants and labor to construct Trent House. You know, I wonder how many students that go to Trenton schools know that Trenton is named after a slave master named William Trent.
Let me ask you this. You know, we have the Congressional Black Caucus. We have a lot of representatives. Why isn't this reparations bill movement being pushed?
Well, there are two answers that I could give. I could probably give three, but I'm not going to try to give all three. The simple answer is that we're not raising enough hell about it out in these streets.
Are we?
That's the simple answer.
So now that it's too late for us.
It's only too late if we accept it.
Okay, but that's my question. Have we accepted it? Have we accepted our place of, go along to get along?
I think some people have accepted, but I think it's clear that Black people continue to resist. I mean, our resistance takes different forms, but it's resistance nonetheless. I mean, we just came out of the Black Lives Matter movement. In New Jersey, there were 157 towns that had Black Lives Matter demonstrations. Some of these towns didn't even have Black people, but they were out there supporting justice for George Floyd and demanding an end to police brutality. That was a nationwide and worldwide form of resistance. I mean, see, the movement moves in, it ebbs and flows like the tide coming in and coming out. There's no straight line of struggle. And everybody is not in the struggle at the same time. You know, there are periods when there's a lot of resistance and there are periods when there's less resistance. You know, people talk about the 1960s. Most people don't know that from 1960 to 1972, there were more than 1,000 urban uprisings in the United States. People talk about the Newark riot. There were 1,000 towns and cities that had what they call riots and what we call rebellions, because these were collective responses to oppression, and almost all of them were triggered by incidents of police brutality. But think about that. 1,000. Kamal, you know, you was there.
Right.
I ain't the only one that's 70 years old. I'll be 70 in 2 weeks. You was there. Man, it was so hot in the 60s. We had a term called right around the cornerism, because we believed the revolution was literally right around the corner. Now, it wasn't a revolution, but it was resistance. It was intense resistance. You know what it took, what went down in Newark. The police couldn't put it down. They sent 700 state troopers. They couldn't put it down. They brought in 1,500 National Guard. We were under military occupation. We were under military occupation just like the Palestinians. We could not leave our houses. We could not go shopping. We couldn't go to, we had to sit in the house basically for 5 days. And then when we left, they had, on my street where I lived, they had both ends of the streets. They had posts at both ends of the streets. You couldn't come on that street without having your car searched. But the amazing thing to me, and I learned this later because I was only, what, 13 years old, 12, 13 years old in 1967, that in the midst of the uprising in Newark, there was a Black Power conference. I'm like, how did these bloods even get in the city? How did they let Stokely Carmichael into Newark? And Newark is under military occupation. How they let Ron Karanga in here? They had a Black Power conference. It literally during the rebellion.
That's right.
And then a year after that, they had a Black Power convention at West Kenny Junior High School. And then a year after that, they had the Black and Puerto Rican convention at Clinton Place Junior High School. And then a year after that, and then out of that convention came Ken Gibson, the first Black mayor of Newark. The 60s were a period of struggle. And then by the mid-70s, that struggle subsided. But what happened after that? The anti-apartheid movement. That was a movement of Black people. I mean, the goal was to overthrow the racist apartheid regime in South Africa, but Black people all over America were in that movement. You couldn't go nowhere in this country, you know, and talk and not see some form of protest, boycott, whatever, you know. And then when Nelson Mandela, we didn't even think Nelson Mandela would ever be free. I mean, we was walking around with buttons on, free Nelson Mandela. The first pop button, the first button POP ever had wasn't a pop button. It was a free Nelson Mandela button. And then when Mandela came out, man, it was like it felt anyway, I guess, the second coming of, you know, Jesus, you know. I mean, there's a lot to be said about what's happened in South Africa since then, but the reality was, you know, that we all felt good about Mandela being freed, and we felt hopeful, you know. And then we had the movement with Jesse, his two campaigns, 84, 88. You know, I mean, I could go on and on and on all night. The point is that we do fight, and it seems like a lot of us, you know, the truth is that everybody don't rise up at the same time, and a deeper truth is that the majority don't rise up. It's always a committed few that rise up first, you know, and then get what do they call, a critical mass, a big enough section of the population to go along with it, so that we could make some change. You know,
we need to rise up again.
Absolutely.
Supporting the Palestinians.
Well, we need to rise up to support ourselves.
Well, that's true. You know? That's true.
And then tie our movement to the international movement. Right. Yes. Right. We should support the Palestinians. We got a long history of supporting the Palestinians. And that's not an example. Malcolm talked about the Palestinian struggle. Malcolm talked about SNCC as early as the 1963, 64 was talking about the Palestinian struggle. You know, I remember when I was in high school, I had a friend of mine in high school. His name was Henry, and Henry was a young member of the Newark chapter of the Black Panther Party. The first person I ever saw with a keffiyeh on. That's that scarf, that black and white scarf they wear. Henry wore that. Yes, there you go, brother. That's it right there. That's it. Henry had one of those on like in 1968. He was the first one that ever, you know, talked to me about the Palestinian. I'm like, the Palestinian, you know, because I went to church. I was raised, they said the Jews were the chosen people and that's their promised land. And then Henry was talking this thing, man. And you know, you know, Kamal, you know, we was raised, they came out with that movie Exodus. You remember that movie Exodus? And they had us all crying. We in the movie crying, and that music is playing. Paul Newman was in that movie Exodus, you know, which was a justification for white settler colonialism in Palestine. You know, it took me, I'm gonna tell you, I ain't gonna lie, it took me a while to get around, to get an understanding of the Palestinian question. You know, I was the youngest delegate to the Gary Convention in 1972.
Okay.
And I was an elected delegate. We were elected. We had local convention, state convention, and we were elected at a state convention to the national convention. I remember, Michael, I remember being on the floor of the Gary Convention for the plenary session, which was chaired by Amiri Baraka. This was the next to the last day of the convention. And we're passing all these platform planks that would become the national Black political agenda, which people can go online. You ain't got to go to the library. You can go online, look up National Black Political Agenda, Gary, Indiana, 1970. You can read it. And it sounds almost as relevant today as it did in 1972. Anyway, we had there was a whole section on like foreign affairs. And there was one little paragraph. The National Black Political Convention supports self-determination for the Palestinian people. Everything is going along good. We got to that plank, all hell broke out. The head of the Michigan delegate, I'm telling you, Kamal, what I saw. I'm not telling you what I read, but you can verify what I'm saying. You can look up the article. It's online that came out in the New York Times the next day, March 1972. This platform plank comes to the floor, self-determination for Palestinian people. The Michigan delegation was up in the balcony. The head of the Michigan delegation was a guy named Coleman Young. That name sound familiar?
Sounds familiar.
Coleman Young eventually went on to become the first Black mayor of Detroit, but he wasn't Black mayor then. Coleman Young stood up and said, if you pass this plank, I'm going to take the whole Michigan delegation out of the convention.
Huh.
And Amiri Baraka was, the pandemonium was breaking out, and Amiri Baraka was trying to get control of things, and he eventually got control of it, and we passed that plank. The Black people of Gary, 1972, supported self-determination for the Palestinian people. Coleman Young took his delegation and walked out. It's in the movie, Kamal, the movie on the Gary Convention. It's in that movie. I think it's even in the Eyes on the Prize. There's a movie about Gary, but you remember the Eyes on the Prize series?
Sure do.
Yes,
Sure
it's
do.
in the Eyes on the Prize series. The part about the Gary Convention, that's in there.
Huh.
So this whole relationship between us and them, but the point I was trying to make is that we got to regain our international footing. I mean, what is one of the things we remember Malcolm most for? Malcolm took our case to the United Nations. Not that, you know, we have any great faith in the United Nations, because the United Nations of 2023 is not the United Nations of 1965. It's a whole different animal now. But Malcolm took our case to the United Nations. He developed relationships with brothers in Asia, Africa, brothers and sisters in Asia, Africa, and Latin America that were engaged in anti-colonial struggles. He went to the OAU, to Addis Ababa. We have kind of lost that connection that we used to have. We need that Pan-African and internationalist connection, because the world is not just Africa, it's other places too.
That's right. That's right.
So we need, you know, we need to talk about Palestine, but we need to talk about Congo. Look at your cell phone.
Man.
There ain't a cell phone that's made in this world that doesn't have coltan in it. Coltan comes from the Congo, where children are worked like slaves. You got to see it to believe it. They down there in that mud, barely with any clothes on. No shoes, down there digging up coltan. Every cell phone in the world is made with coltan. I think they use it to make the motherboard part. because it can absorb heat. There's genocide in the Congo. There's genocide in Sudan. You know, there's a revolution going on in all of French-speaking Africa.
That's right.
In Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Niger, in Conakry, Guinea. These brothers and sisters done rose up, said, French, get out. Y'all just taking our uranium, you taking our gold. I heard the brother what's his name? Traore? In Burkina Faso. Yeah. He was talking about, he said, France has one of the largest reserves of gold in the world, but there are no gold mines in France. I couldn't get, you know, I mean, it was so simple, but you know, sometimes we look over the obvious, you know, the thing that's like right in front of us. We look right, he said, France has one of the largest reserves of gold in the world, but there are no gold mines in France. They're getting their gold out of Africa. They're getting uranium. The major source of power in France is nuclear reactors. The French fully embrace the nuclear power. What makes nuclear reactors run? Uranium. Where they getting their uranium from? From Africa, from their former African territories, their former African colonies. You know, so we got to have an international, you know, international connection. Look at Cuba. We talked about South Africa a minute ago. Black people in South Africa wouldn't have been free if it hadn't been in part because of the contribution made by the Cubans. Many people don't know.
That's true.
Castro sent troops to fight the white South African army in Angola at the Battle of Quito Carnival. And the defeat of the white South African army at Quito Carnival was the prelude to the freeing of Nelson Mandela and the eventual overthrow of the apartheid regime. And we've had an embargo against Cuba for the last, 60 years?
That's right.
You know, and Cubans are Cubans, but guess what? They also are. If I'm an African, Cubans are Africans.
That's right.
They even know what tribes they came from. In fact, some of them were saying, you know, that the people that they were descended from were in fact Africans that were taken by slavers out of Angola and brought to Cuba. You know, I just say that to say we need that. And see, trying to bring it back, foreign affairs is one of the things that U.S. senators do. Treaties, agreements with other nations, national policies toward nations, all of that has to come through the Senate. Military weapons, but now they're trying to find ways of end running, like Biden just did an end run around Congress to give more weapons to the Israelis for the genocide that they are committing in Palestine, in Gaza right now. And it's terrible what they're doing to them people. Have you seen some of the footage coming out of it? It's terrible, man. Mm-hmm. It's terrible. And it's like, you know, when I was in school, when I was at South 17th Street School, they taught us about World War. And I always wondered, I said, now, if Hitler was so terrible, how could he get power? You know, because they would say like he's a demon and he's the devil, you know, and I believe that. But like, if he was all of that, how did he get power? And then once he got into power, did y'all just stand around and let him do these evil things? You know, people don't know, you know, about Germany got a terrible history. You know where they got concentration. You know where the concentration camps started. Didn't start in Europe. They started in Africa. Namibia used to be called Southwest Africa. And it was a colony of Germany. And the Germans rounded up and put the indigenous Africans, the Herero people in concentration camps and massacred them. 80,000 massacred. The Herero. And they did the same thing. They did the same thing in the Germans did it in Namibia, in Southwest Africa. The Belgians did it. They talk about all the people killed during World War II. The Belgians killed 10 million Africans in Congo.
Cut hands
And if you
off.
want to read, huh?
Cut hands off.
Yes. Not only did they cut the hands off, they made candy. They made little boxes of chocolate hands. I mean, celebrating what they did. I mean, it's off. There's a book called, I think, Red Rubber. Alombe Brath used to tell me about that book. But you don't even, you can go on. It's like, this is not secret knowledge. You can just look it up. But yeah, the Belgians killed like 10 million in the Congo. And then the British, they killed. Do you know that the fight for reparations is going on right now in Kenya? The people in Kenya are fighting for reparations from the British. Because, you remember the Mau Mau. Well, you wouldn't remember, Michael, because you young. Me and Kamau, we old. We know about the Mau Mau. Everything they saying about Hamas, that's what they said about the Mau Mau, that they were terrorists and they were rapists. Remember when they said they raped nuns? They put the Kikuyu. The British put the Kikuyu in concentration camps and killed them in concentration camps and took their land.
So what's going on? Nothing new.
Nothing new under the sun.
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing. Nothing new under the sun.
Man, we could go on for another couple hours. Because
I'm gonna have to jump off because I got to do another show, believe it or not.
No, but I just wanted to ask you, how can we help? How can people help you?
I'm going to say something that's going to sound counterintuitive, right? And contradictory. I hate politics. I hate politics.
I understand.
And one of the reasons I hate politics is because we learn about our political system and we're told one thing, but once we get in it, we see it's something else. Like, this system doesn't run without money. And that's one of the things that has to be changed. One of the things I'll do in the U.S. Senate is try and put forward a bill to nullify or overturn the Citizens United Supreme Court decision that essentially said millionaires and billionaires can give as much money to anybody they want.
All right.
And that's how they control the political system. So there are two things. There are two critical, well, they're really like three critical things I need to make my campaign successful. One, I need to come before as many people as possible, as many groups of people as possible. So, we just had our first meet and greet at North Stelton Road AME Church in Piscataway. That was my first campaign event. That was last week. And I want to hit all 21 counties. The election is June 4th. So I want to have meet and greets and rallies and coffee clutches and whatever in all 21 counties before June 4th. The second thing is I got to get on the ballot. And to get on the ballot, I must have the signatures of 1,000 currently registered voters. So I'm going to need people to help get signatures on my petition. The petitions won't be out. The Secretary of State won't put the petitions out until after January 1st, which ain't that far away. This is already the 13th of December. So I'm going to need help.
Do you need again?
1,000. So if I want to get through with 1,000, I got to submit 2,000 because they're going to try and strike out as many of my signatures. They don't want me on the ballot. They really don't. The party doesn't want me. You know who the party wants. They want the governor's wife because they done all endorsed her already. She ain't said a word. She ain't went before nobody yet. She already got all the county organizations. Even Menendez on his own Hudson County organization endorsed Tammy Murphy. So I got to get the petition signed. And then the third thing is I need money. I got to do advertising, and that advertising costs a lot of money. So if people want to help with the campaign, they can go to our website, www.lawrencehamm4senate.info. And it's the number 4, not the word 4. Lawrence Hamm 4, number 4, Senate.info. And if you go there, you can sign up to be a volunteer. You can also make a donation through that website. But it's serious, man. It's a serious thing. Now, in the last election, first go round, I got 119,000 votes. And that was good the first time out. But I need more than that. I need 3 or 4 times that many votes. And I think we can do better because, the advantage that I have is that I was out there in 2020 when I ran against Cory Booker. The other thing is, incidentally, lest people accuse me of playing the race card, incidentally, I'm the only Black candidate. It's going to be a crowded race. You're going to have Menendez might run again. You're going to have Tammy Murphy. You're going to have Andy Kim, Sister Patricia Medina Campos, or Campos Medina. Patricia Campos Medina, she says she's going to run. I suspect that by the time we get through the petition process, the certification process, there might be 5 or 6 people in this race. But I'm running to the end. I'm running to win. I'm not going to drop out. I don't care how many millionaires are in the race. I'm not dropping out. And I'm hoping that my folks will come to the rescue.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, we will do everything we can to assist you.
Well, I appreciate that.
Is Italia organizing down here in Mercer County?
Yes.
Okay.
Talk to Italia. I think she's trying to put something together for Trenton in January.
Okay.
So talk to Italia, who I have immense respect for. But there's a bunch of y'all down there that I have immense respect for, including the 2 brothers that I'm looking at. You've been on your hand been on the plow a long time, brother.
Yeah, I got some blisters, bro. I got some blisters. They good blisters. You know what I mean?
Yes, indeed.
You know what I mean.
I know what you mean. What you mean.
Brother.
Well, stay strong.
All right, I will.
Thank you for coming on the show, Mr. Hamm. Glad you're here. We're looking forward to seeing you in the Senate.
All right. Thank you, brother.
All right.
Appreciate that. All right. Y'all take care now.
All
yes,
right.
sir.
Well, son, that was an outstanding show. I love it.
Was.
I love. He has energy I don't have.
I felt like I would learn so much.
Yeah.
I can listen to you.
That's why I just let him go. Go on with it. Sure.
Yeah, I just sat back and was
bring it on home.
Taking it all in.
And that's that's what we need to do, because most of us don't have that history.
Right.
Most of us can't connect what he said that was going on at the beginning to what's going on now.
Exactly.
So it's critically important that if you get the opportunity to listen to this show and or to listen to him, you'll learn. And once you learn, you can't do nothing but vote for the man. Who else are you gonna vote for? Tammy Murphy? What the hell? What the hell is Tammy Murphy? Oh, her greatest claim to fame is that she married a governor. Come on. What is that about?
Nepotism.
Anyway.
They call it nepotism, right?
Or something like that. Yeah, no.
Right?
Next week is the 20th. We're getting close to Christmas, huh?
Yes.
No. Next week is the 21st, because this will air tomorrow.
Yes.
All right, so be 20 would be that much closer to Christmas. That's good. That's good. I don't know who we're gonna have on, but we're gonna touch base with Al and with Sean. We'll find out who we're gonna have on next week. Right?
Yes. Yes.
All right, son. It's been a pleasure. This is a recorded show, so we're sorry we couldn't take any comments or anything, but next week we'll see what we can do. Okay?
Yes. Yes.
All right, son. Have a
All
good
right,
night.
Pop.
All right.
Love you.
Love you too, brother.
Peace.